Everybody, I'm Neil Cavito, and never mind, Ted Cruz says he was not the one who shut down the government. He got blamed for it. How is it the media ignores the president opening a constitutional can of worms up, and no one says boo about it? Because Cruz says it's the prez out of control, and the media out of excuses for a double standard that's even more out of control. Senator, welcome. You've gone so far as to call this an imperial presidency. Why?
Well, one of the most disturbing patterns we've seen of the last 5 years is a consistent pattern of lawlessness from President Obama. If he disagrees with a federal law, he simply refuses to enforce it, whether it is immigration laws or welfare laws or drug laws or marriage laws. When he disagrees, rather than try to change it, which is the way our constitutional system works, he simply announces the Department of Justice won't enforce it, he won't obey it, and most strikingly, if you look to the implementation of Obamacare, it's the best example of lawlessness, because over and over again, President Obama has ignored the plain text of the law, created exceptions. He created an exception for big business that's contrary to the plain text of the law, giving big business a one-year waiver. He created an exception for Congress, contrary to the plain text of the law, an exception for members of Congress. And most strikingly, Neil, when over 5 million people lost their health insurance because Obamacare prohibits the plans that they liked, that they wanted to keep. You know, the usual way our constitutional system would work is that if a president saw that a law wasn't working, he'd go to Congress, he'd propose a change. Instead, President Obama just held a press conference where he instructed private insurers, issue plans that the law makes illegal, disobey the law, and I'm going to give you a get-out-of-jail-free card. You know, in over 200 years of our nation's history, that's never happened before.
But, Senator, you know, the White House says he is not the first to implement executive orders. In fact, the sheer number, less than Bill Clinton and George Bush. So they say you're making a big to-do out of nothing. What do you say?
Well, see, what they're trying to do is play a shell game. The comparison is not the number of executive orders. There are legitimate executive orders. The president, under Article 2 of the Constitution, has the authority to execute the laws and to direct how the executive branch will do so. That's an appropriate area for executive orders. What's unprecedented is the president changing the law, ignoring the written law. You know, it used to be that what the law is something that is passed through both houses of Congress and signed into law. This president is the first president we've ever seen who claims to have the authority to just change it unilaterally. For example, when he tells insurance companies, violate the law, ignore the fact that these plans are illegal under Obamacare, I'm telling you to break the law. No president's ever done that before, and that is a very dangerous precedent, because if a president can pick and choose what laws to follow, he's no longer a president, and that is dangerous for the liberty of everyone.
So do you think that the president and his people, when they say they've been forced into this executive order corner because Republicans have put him there by not even acting on his appointments, acting on any of his initiatives, tabling them, blocking them, that it's all your fault?
Well, that is certainly their talking point. But the truth of the matter is he doesn't talk to Congress. He's not interested in working with Congress. He is interested in executive fiat and decree. But even if it's the case, let's assume he's right, that he's having a hard time convincing Congress of something. You know what? He's not the first president with whom Congress has disagreed. You think Tip O'Neill loved Ronald Reagan's agenda? But Reagan went and convinced Congress, and the way he did it is he took the case to the American people. President Obama doesn't want to be bothered with the niceties of democracy in our constitutional system. He just wants to decree it. And this
well, if you ever became president, there's some who think that you might run for president. We could get into that another time. But if you ever were to be president, how would you administer from the White House? Because you're kind of my way or the highway kind of guy. So how would that go?
Well, see, but I'm a believer in the Constitution and the limitations, the checks and balances in the Constitution that limit presidential power protect everyone's liberty. And look, Article 2 of the Constitution gives the president a responsibility to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. And I think any president should follow that. But, you know, one of the things I outlined today in the Wall Street Journal, all of the liberals, all of the Democrats, all of those in the media who are remaining silent right now because they happen to agree with President Obama's policy agenda, they're all going to come to regret this. This shouldn't be a partisan issue. When the next president is elected, if he or she happens to be a Republican, under the Obama precedent, Nothing would stop that next president from refusing to enforce or changing tax laws, changing labor laws, changing environmental laws, changing tort laws. Imagine if the next president said, for example, we're no longer going to collect income taxes from individuals above 25%. I'm changing the law, and we're not going to collect it. You know, the individual,
well, that would be a bit of a stretch, don't you think? I mean, I guess the way all this is coming up, and you get the attention you do, Senator, is because you are, you know, a fire starter, and a lot of people do see you as a maverick possible candidate for president. It was an issue I raised with no less than Mitt Romney just last night on this very show, and we took up the issue of possible candidates for 2016. If you can give this a listen.
Paul Ryan will always be first and foremost in my mind, given an extraordinary campaign that we worked on together and his leadership in Washington. But Jeb Bush may get in. Mike Huckabee might come back. Scott Walker in Wisconsin could run.
But you didn't mention Rand Paul, sure. And you didn't mention Ted Cruz.
Well, you know, they represent different parts of the party. I'm going to give them a chance to express their views. But I think that we are going to be best if we can unify behind a leader of the party who represents as broad a portion of the party as possible.
Senator, were you offended that you were on top of mind for him?
Oh, look, Mitt Romney is entitled to support whomever he likes, to advocate for whomever he likes. If he thinks that the presidential nominee should be a moderate, he's entitled to that opinion. I think Republicans believe we should nominate a strong conservative. And in fact, the way you unify Republicans is just like Ronald Reagan did in 1980. You stand for conservative principles, free market principles. You stand for the Constitution.
Well, is Chris Christie a moderate? Is he the guy who stands for those principles?
You know, that's a decision for the voters to make.
Well, what do you think? What do you think?
You know, I'm going to let the voters make those determinations. What I think is Republicans should stand for principle. We should stand for growth and opportunity, for free market principles. We should, as Reagan put it, not paint in pale pastels, but in bold colors. Say,
well, I'm going to be obnoxious, Senator. It seems to me that you're saying that Chris Christie is one of those who paint in broad pastels.
No, I'm saying this is what we should do. We should draw a clear contrast. On Obamacare, we should say it's a disaster. It's killing millions of jobs. Over 5 million people have lost their health insurance, and we need to repeal it all.
Gotcha.
On the Constitution, we need to get back to the Bill of Rights. We need to advocate fundamental tax reform, regulatory reform.
But would you fight fire with fire? I mean, we have a big battle coming up over the debt ceiling. And a number of fellow Republicans have said we ought to attach demands to that before we grant it. Are you among them? And if that came to pushing the government to a possible shutdown, would you be okay with that?
Look, of course, we should put conditions on raising the debt ceiling. If you get outside of Washington, you ask anybody, doesn't matter, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, is spending out of control, and should we do something structurally to bring our debt under control? Everyone says obviously yes. Our debt in 5 years has gone from $10 trillion to $17 trillion.
Even if that meant taking the government to the brink?
Look, it doesn't have to mean that. If you look historically, the debt ceiling over and over again has been the most effective lever for spending restraints, whether it was Graham-Rudman, which was incredibly successful, or the Budget Control Act. And so for everyone, what President Obama is asking for is give him a blank check to keep racking up debt while doing nothing to fix the problem. Of course we should fix the problem.
Senator, it's always a pleasure having you. Thank you very much.